You're here again. Good. There's a particular kind of dark waiting for you tonight, older than the others we visited, and quieter. Let your body find its own way into stillness. It knows how by now. The night has you. There are thresholds we cross every night. The threshold of sleep, where we have been together in earlier journeys. The threshold of the moon's light, and the crossing from dark to dawn. But there is one threshold that every living thing crosses only once, and it is the one that has been tended the longest. Tonight we come to the ones who stand at that threshold, not the gods of death. We will visit them in time, and they are a different company altogether. Not the judges, not the rulers of the underworld, not the ones who determine what happens on the other side. The ones we meet tonight have a more intimate function than any of those. They walk beside you. The word for them is psychopomp, from the Greek psyche, soul, and pompos, guide or escort. Soul guide, soul conductor, the one who takes you from here to there, who knows the road, who does not let you make the crossing alone. But the word is Greek, and the figures are universal. Every culture that has ever thought carefully about death has arrived at the same understanding. The crossing should not be made unaccompanied. That there is something, someone, whose specific purpose is to be present at the moment between, to stand at the threshold with the newly dead and say, I know the way. Come with me. I have been thinking about why this is, why every tradition, independently, arrived at the same conviction. And I think it is this. The psychopomp is not the cause of death. That is crucial. They do not decide when you die, or how, or what comes after. They are not the judge. They carry no verdict. They exercise no power over your fate beyond the single act of accompanying you to where your fate will be determined. They are transit workers of the soul. They are the ones who ensure the crossing is made with dignity, that the newly dead are not lost in the in-between, not stranded at the threshold, not left to find their own way through territory they have never navigated before. Every culture has them, because every culture has understood that dying alone, without guidance, without accompaniment, is one of the worst things that can happen to a person. And so they imagined, or perhaps perceived, or perhaps were shown, the figures who prevent it. What I find most moving, traveling through these traditions, is the variety of forms the escort takes. Some of the psychopomps tonight are grand and ancient and cosmic, the messenger of the Olympian gods himself, the great jackal-headed god of Egypt. Some are small and local, a figure attached to a single family across generations, a creature assembled from the leftover pieces of all other animals. Some are fierce, warrior women who choose the honored dead on the battlefield. Some are tender beyond measure, a bodhisattva who hides lost children in the sleeves of his robe. Some come in pairs, a lord and a lady who between them tend the full register of death and grief and the irreverent insistence on life. And some are so beloved by the people they serve that 10 million of those people worship them today, right now, in ways that the official church has tried and failed to stop. Different faces, different registers, different qualities of companionship, but a same act, walking beside. And one more thing I want to say before we begin, because it matters to how you receive these stories. The animals know. The dogs, and the ravens, and the crows, and the owls, and the butterflies. In almost every tradition on earth, certain animals are understood as psychopomps, as companions of the crossing, as beings who move between the world of the living and the world of the dead with a fluency that humans cannot manage. You will find them threaded through tonight's stories like a recurring note in a piece of music, sometimes prominent, sometimes barely audible, but always present. Paying attention to them is part of paying attention to what these traditions are saying about what death is and who tends it. We begin where the word begins, in Greece, with the one who gave his name to all the others. Hermes. His name means the one of the boundary stone, or the one of the crossing place, or simply the one who is always between things. The etymology is old and contested and perhaps deliberately elusive, because Hermes himself is the god of the between, the deity of all the spaces where one thing ends and another begins, and it would be appropriate for his name to resist easy definition. He is the messenger of the gods, the god of travelers, of merchants, of thieves, of language, of luck, of the crossroads where roads diverge. He invented the lyre and gave it to Apollo. He stole Apollo's cattle as an infant and negotiated his way out of punishment before sunset. He is the trickster of Olympus, the quick-witted one, the one who moves when others stand still. And he is the only Olympian who moves freely between all three realms, the sky, the earth, and the underworld. The other gods have their domains and respect the borders between them. Hermes has no domain except the crossing itself. Psychopompos, soul escort. The title was his first. He is recognizable by what he wears. The winged sandals, talaria, that carry him faster than any thought. The winged cap, the petazos, that conceals his identity when he needs to move unseen. And the caduceus, the herald's staff, wound about with two serpents, the instrument of his authority as messenger. The caduceus is the detail that rewards close attention. Two serpents coiled around a staff, facing each other. Serpents, in the ancient world, were creatures of the boundary. They moved between the underground and the surface, between the chthonic and the living world, between death and renewal. They shed their skins and were born again. They carried both the power to kill and, in many traditions, the knowledge to heal. Two of them, wound together, held by Hermes, the guide of the dead, carrying the emblem of things that live between worlds. When the dead needed to be escorted, Hermes came with his caduceus raised. The shades would gather around it, drawn to the authority it represented, to the certainty that here was someone who knew the road. He would lead them down to the river, to the shore where Charon waited, and there he would hand them over to the next stage of the journey. There is a scene in Homer's Odyssey, the very end of the poem, in the final book, that I think is the most beautiful image of Hermes as psychopomp in all of ancient literature. The suitors are dead. Odysseus has killed them all in the great hall of his palace. The men who had invaded his home, eaten his food, pursued his wife, corrupted his household for 20 years. They lie on the floor of the Megaron, slaughtered, and Hermes comes. He comes with his golden wand, and Homer describes what happens next with such specificity that it stops you. The shades of the suitors follow Hermes, squeaking like bats in the deep of a cave. The image is not grand, it is not solemn, it is somehow tender in its very smallness. These men who had been large in life, who had filled the hall with their noise and their appetite and their cruelty, are now small. They squeak. They follow the guide with the golden wand down into the darkness. Hermes leads them past the streams of ocean and the white rock, past the gates of the sun and the land of dreams, and into the meadow of asphodel where the dead dwell. He does not judge them. He does not reward or punish. He leads them from where they were to where the dead go, with the same efficiency and the same neutrality that he leads all souls. The suitors who had spent 20 years making Odysseus's home a place of suffering. Hermes guides them as carefully as he would guide the most virtuous soul. That is what a psychopomp is. The escort is not the verdict. The guide is not the judge. There is a second scene involving Hermes as psychopomp that I want to tell you about, because it illuminates something the Odyssey scene does not. His name was Orpheus. He was a musician, not a musician in the ordinary sense, but one of those rare beings whose gift exceeds anything that practice or craft can explain. When Orpheus played his lyre, rivers slowed. Trees pulled their roots from the earth to lean closer. Stones softened. Wild animals lay down at his feet. The world could not help but attend to him. He had a wife. Her name was Eurydice. She died. Suddenly, on what may have been their wedding day, a snake bite on an afternoon that had no warning in it. And Orpheus, who could move the stones and slow the rivers, could do nothing. He did what only Orpheus could do. He went after her. He descended into the underworld, played his lyre at the entrance until the music reached the throne of Hades himself, moved the god of death to something he had never felt before, and was given a condition. Eurydice could follow him back to the living world. He would walk ahead. She would follow. He must not look back. Not until they had both fully crossed the threshold into the light. He walked. He climbed through the dark passage back toward the living world, listening for her behind him. The dead make no sound. He could hear nothing. No footstep, no breath, no sign that she was there. The passage was long, and the dark was total, and his mind, in the silence, began its terrible work. What if she was not there? What if Hades had deceived him? What if he was climbing back to the world alone? The light appeared ahead. The entrance was close. He turned. She was there. She had been there the whole time, right behind him, close enough to touch. Her face wearing an expression that held too many things at once to name. And then she was gone, drawn back into the dark, her voice barely forming the word farewell before the underworld reclaimed her. But whose hand was it that took her back? Hermes, the same guide who had led her up toward the light, walking behind Orpheus and before the threshold of the living world. Hermes was there when the backward glance happened. He saw Orpheus turn. He saw Eurydice in the moment of loss. And then he did what he always does, without judgment and without delay. He escorted her back. He returned her to the world of the dead with the same care that he had been about to bring her to the world of the living. This is the detail that stops me when I return to it. Hermes does not choose sides in the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. He does not lament the failure of the condition or celebrate its enforcement. He does not comfort Orpheus, and he does not explain himself to Eurydice. He is simply the escort, present for the going up and present for the going back down, faithful to the soul in either direction, doing what the soul needs regardless of how the story is going. He guided Eurydice toward the light. He guided her back into the dark, both times with the same steady presence, the same golden wand, the same knowledge of the road. This is the deepest quality of the psychopomp. Not that it only goes in one direction, but that it goes where the soul needs to go, that it is there for both crossings, in whatever direction the crossing is made. Hermes had another role that matters here, and it is one that the ancient world understood as connected to his psychopomp function. He was the god who brought dreams, the same figure who guided the dead to the underworld, also carried the dreams of the living into sleep. He moved between the living and the dead, and the dreaming with equal ease, because all three territories are the same territory, the place where the ordinary boundaries of the waking world dissolve, consciousness without its usual guardrails, the self without the armor it wears in daylight. Hermes is the god of all the places where the self becomes permeable, where things pass through, including the final thing. Hermes leaves them, finally, at the edge of his own territory. The sky and the earth and the upper reaches of the underworld are his to move through freely. But the underworld itself, the deep kingdom, the rivers, the thrones, belongs to others. He brings the soul as far as the threshold requires, and then he hands them to the next keeper of the crossing. The first of those keepers is waiting at the water's edge. Hermes brings them to the shore, and there, at the shore, is Charon, the ferryman. He is not beautiful, he is not young, he is not gentle, and he is not patient with the living who try to bargain or explain or delay. He is old, ancient in a way that things which have always been doing the same job are ancient. He is depicted as gaunt, with a straggly beard, wearing a rough tunic, leaning on his pole. His eyes, some accounts say, are burning, not warmly, the burning of something that has been watching the same crossing for so long that the watching has become a kind of fire. His boat is small. It crosses a river called the Styx, or in some accounts, the Acheron, the rivers of the underworld, the water that divides the living world from the dead. On one side, everything that has ever lived. On the other, whatever comes next. Charon poles the boat across. He has always done this. He will always do this. The price is a coin, one coin, placed in the mouth of the dead, or on the eyes, in some traditions, before burial. The obol, the ancient Greek small coin, the minimum required to pay for the crossing. Families buried their dead with the coin. It was not a symbolic gesture. It was practical preparation for a journey, the way you press money into a traveller's hand before they leave. What happens to those who cannot pay? Who were buried without the coin, or not buried at all? Charon turns them away. They wait on the near bank, drifting, hovering, the unburied and the unpaid, for 100 years before they are permitted to cross without the fare. This is why proper burial mattered so profoundly in the ancient world, not for the dignity of the corpse, though that too, but because the body needed the coin. The dead needed to be able to pay. The crossing required a price, and the living owed it to the dead to make sure they could meet it, the coin under the tongue. Think about that image for a moment. The last gift given to someone you love is pressed between their lips after death. The final act of care, practical and ritual simultaneously. A coin, small enough to hold in one hand, carrying the whole weight of what it means to send someone safely on the only journey that has no return. Charon is a psychopomp of a different kind from Hermes. Hermes accompanies. He walks beside. He leads. He makes the journey with the soul. Charon carries. He does not walk with you. He bears you across in his boat. The soul's role in Charon's crossing is entirely passive. You get in. You pay. You arrive. Think about what that distinction actually means for the soul making the crossing. With Hermes, you are still, in some sense, a participant. You walk. You follow. There is movement that is yours, even if the destination is fixed. With Charon, that last shred of agency is gone. You are cargo now, not a companion on a journey. And this is not a cruelty on Charon's part. It is simply the nature of where you have arrived. Every threshold, the further you travel into it, asks less of you and not more. By the time you reach the ferryman, the asking is over. This is, I think, the quiet mercy hidden inside Charon's silence. He does not need you to do anything right. He does not require courage or readiness or the correct words spoken at the correct moment. He only requires the coin. And even that was placed in your mouth by someone who loved you before you ever had to think about it yourself. There is something in this that reflects a deeper truth about the crossing. At some point, at the very last point, there is nothing left to do, nothing to navigate, nothing to decide, nothing to control. You get in the boat. The ferryman pulls you across. The other shore arrives. Charon does not speak. In most accounts, he does not comfort. He does not explain. He takes the coin and he pulls and he delivers. The efficiency is almost brutal. And yet, he shows up. Every soul, every crossing since the beginning. He is always there when the soul arrives at the shore. Never absent, never delayed. The ferryman at his post, doing the one thing that makes the crossing possible. Virgil, in the Aeneid, gives us the most vivid image of the souls at the shore. The crowd of them, the multitude of the dead pressing toward the boat, reaching for the far bank. Mothers and men and heroes and infants. Young men burned on a funeral pyre before their time. Girls unwed. Warriors. The sheer volume of the dead. Waiting. And Charon, sorting them. Some he takes, some he keeps back. Not by quality or virtue, but by burial. The properly buried may board, the unburied must wait. The ferryman as bureaucrat, the crossing as procedure. Not unkind exactly, but not war, simply what it is. The mechanism by which the dead get where the dead need to go. He is one of the oldest images in the human imagination of what death's attendant might look like. An old man in a boat on a dark river doing his job. And every coin that has ever been placed in every dead person's mouth, in Greece and beyond it, in all the traditions that found their way to this same image, was a payment made in trust that someone would be there. Someone always is. We travel now to Egypt, to the oldest continuous religious tradition in human history. A civilization that thought about death with more sustained intensity and more practical precision than any other, that devoted enormous resources and extraordinary artistry to the care of the dead, that believed with absolute conviction that what you did with the body and for the soul in the time immediately after death determined everything that came after. And at the center of all of that, at the threshold between the moment of dying and whatever the dead face next, stands a figure whose image has become one of the most recognizable in the history of human art, the jackal-headed god, Anubis. Why a jackal? Because jackals were the animals of the cemetery. In ancient Egypt, before the elaborate tombs of the later dynasties, the dead were buried in the desert at the edge of the cultivation, in the sandy ground at the margin between the green world of the Nile flood and the brown world of the desert. And in that margin, jackals moved. They were the animals of the boundary between the living and the dead. They smelled the burials. They came at night. The Egyptians, who were precise observers of the natural world and saw meaning in every pattern they observed, understood the jackal as an animal of the threshold. And so, the god who tended that threshold was given the jackal's head. The dark, furred, alert, sharply intelligent face of the creature, who already knew the ground between life and death better than any human could. His skin is black, not the black of the jackal's coat, which is golden and brown, but the black of fertile silt, the black of the Nile's floodplain after the inundation, the black of resurrection and renewal, because death, in the Egyptian understanding, was not an ending. It was a transformation. The black land that the Nile left behind when it receded was the richest soil in the world, capable of producing life in abundance. Anubis's blackness is that kind of dark, the darkness that precedes what comes next. His function begins with the body. This is what distinguishes Anubis most sharply from the other psychopomps we have visited tonight. Hermes escorts the soul, Charon ferries it, but Anubis begins with the physical, with the body that the soul has just left, with the irreplaceable and sacred matter that was, a moment ago, a living person. He is the god of embalming, of mummification, of the 70 days of preparation that the Egyptian tradition required before the dead could complete their crossing. He is depicted in tomb paintings, presiding over the wrapping of the body, guiding the hands of the embalmers, ensuring that the ritual procedures are correctly performed. Why does the body matter for a soul's journey? Because in the Egyptian understanding, the body is not simply the discarded container. The BA, one of the soul's components, needed to be able to recognize and return to the body. The preservation of the physical form was not vanity, it was navigation. A mummified body was a landmark, a home base, a point of return for the part of the soul that needed to know where it had come from. The care of the body was part of the care of the soul. They could not be separated, and Anubis was the god of both. And then the weighing. This is the image that has endured most powerfully from ancient Egypt into the modern imagination. The hall of two truths, where the dead stand before the scales. On one side of the scale, a feather, the feather of Maman, the goddess of truth, of cosmic order, of the fundamental rightness of things. Maman herself is rarely shown doing anything dramatic. She stands, or sits, or simply is, the single ostrich feather rising from her headband, the only ornament she needs, because she does not have to act to be powerful. She only has to be measured against the lightest possible weight, the weight of truth itself. On the other side of the scale, the heart. The heart was the seat of the self in Egyptian understanding. Not the brain, not the soul in any abstract sense, but the specific organ that pumped in your chest and recorded every thought and deed and feeling you had ever experienced. The heart was the life's record. The heart was what you had actually been. Anubis weighs it. If the heart is lighter than the feather, if the life has been lived in truth, without the weight of wrongdoing, without the heaviness of what was done and should not have been, the soul may proceed. Thoth, the scribe, records the result. The soul is declared justified. If the heart is heavier than the feather, it is given to Ammit, the devourer, the composite creature of crocodile and lion and hippopotamus, who waits beside the scales, whose name means bone eater. The heart is consumed. The soul ceases. The scales do not lie. The heart does not lie. And Anubis, who tends the weighing with the same precise care that he brought to the wrapping of the body, is not the judge. That is Osiris, enthroned beyond the scales. Anubis is the one who makes sure the measurement is correct, who holds the scales steady, who ensures the process happens as it should. He is, even here, a tender of procedure, a keeper of the threshold, not the verdict, but the integrity of the moment before the verdict. Egypt gives us this: death as procedure, as measurement, as a stillness so total that even the judgment is administered with care. But not every tradition imagined the crossing this way. Some imagined it as something seized in the middle of chaos, chosen not in a quiet hall after the heart has already stopped, but in the worst and loudest moment a life can hold. For that, we leave the calm of the Nile behind entirely. We travel north, to the Norse world, to the battlefield, where the other psychopomps we have met so far arrive after death has happened. These figures arrive in the thick of it. They are present at the moment of dying, not to cause it, not to prevent it, but to witness it and to choose. Their name tells you what they are. Valkyria, chooser of the slain. They are warriors themselves, armed, armored, mounted on horses that can cross the sky. They move through the chaos of the battlefield like a different quality of presence, attending to what only they can see. Which of the dying are chosen, and which are not? The cosmology behind the Valkyries requires a word of explanation, because without it, the choosing seems arbitrary. In the Norse understanding, Odin, the All-Father, the god of wisdom and war and poetry and death, is perpetually preparing for Ragnarok, the great ending, the twilight of the gods, when the wolf Fenrir will break his chains, and the Midgard serpent will rise from the sea, and the cosmos, as it is known, will come to its violent conclusion. This is not a fear, but a fact in the Norse imagination. It is coming. The only question is whether when it comes, the gods will have sufficient warriors to fight alongside them. Valhalla, the hall of the slain, is the preparation. Every warrior who dies with honor on the battlefield is a potential soldier in the final war. The Valkyries choose which of the dying warriors are worthy of Valhalla, which will be taken to fight alongside Odin at the end of all things. This is why the selecting matters. They are not simply escorting souls. They are recruiting. But the recruiting is also an escorting. Once chosen, the warrior is lifted, carried in some accounts, on the Valkyrie's horse across the sky, borne toward Valhalla, where Odin waits to receive them. The selecting and the escorting are one continuous act. The Valkyrie sees you in your dying moment, judges you worthy, and then carries you home. Home. That is the word I keep returning to when I think about the Valkyries. For a warrior of the Norse world, Valhalla is not simply an afterlife. It is the afterlife they have been aiming at their entire lives. The one they hoped for. The one the culture told them was the best possible outcome of a life well fought. To be chosen by a Valkyrie is to arrive at the place you were always hoping to reach. They are psychopomps who deliver you to your own best dream. The Valkyries have names. This matters. Named psychopomps are different from anonymous ones. These are individuals, each with her own character. Brynhilde, the armoured one. Sigrun, Victory Rune. Gundel, Wand Wielder. Skuld, who shares her name with one of the three Norns. The Fate, she who represents what shall be. In the Eddic poetry and the sagas, individual Valkyries have stories, and of all those stories, none is more devastating or more revealing of what the Valkyrie actually is than the story of Brynhilde. Brynhilde was among the greatest of the Valkyries, fierce, loyal, utterly committed to her function as the chooser of the slain. She served Odin. She rode the battlefield. She selected the worthy dead and escorted them to Valhalla as she was made to do. And then she disobeyed. Odin had instructed her to give victory to one king in a particular battle. Brynhilde gave victory to a different king, the one she thought was more deserving, the one whose cause she judged more just. She made her own judgment where she was meant to execute Odin's. She chose with her own heart, rather than the All-Father's will. Odin punished her. He could not take back her power entirely. She was what she was, and the Valkyrie's nature cannot simply be removed. But he could take her freedom. He put her to sleep. Not the sleep of Hypnos's cave, not the ordinary rest that restores. The sleep of enchantment, deep and permanent, with no waking except on his terms. He carried her to a mountain. Some accounts say Hindafjall, a peak at the edge of the world. And he laid her down, and he surrounded her with fire, a ring of flames, burning without consuming, the fire of divine anger made into a permanent barrier. And he decreed that only a man who did not know fear, a man brave enough to ride through the fire, could wake her. She lay there, sleeping, surrounded by fire. For how long? The texts do not say precisely. Long enough for the world to go on without her. Long enough for her name to become a legend. Long enough for a hero to be born who had not yet learned the particular lesson that fear teaches. His name was Sigurd. He was young and bold and had never been afraid of anything because he had not yet experienced the things that teach fear. He came to the mountain. He saw the fire. He rode through it. She woke. They looked at each other. And what happened between them? The love that developed from that waking. The tragedy that followed from the complications of the world they were both embedded in. The grief of it. This is one of the great love narratives of Norse literature. One of the foundations of the entire Volsung cycle. The story that Wagner turned into the Ring cycle, and that has been retold in some form in almost every century since. But what matters here, tonight, is what the story reveals about the Valkyrie. She chose. When the rules said to execute Odin's will, she chose her own judgment instead, and the consequence of that choosing was removal from the crossing, banishment from the threshold she had always tended, the forced sleep that took her out of her function. The psychopomp who made a personal choice was punished with the inability to choose anything at all, frozen in sleep until another's courage freed her. The escort who chose to stay, removed from escorting. The chooser of the slain, made unable to choose. The Valkyrie at the center of fire, waiting for someone brave enough to come. There is something in the Valkyrie tradition that is unlike anything else in the psychopomp world. The idea that the escort has preferences, that the one who guides has opinions about who is worth guiding, that the crossing is not neutral, but personal, that between the dying warrior and the choosing Valkyrie, there is something that might be called recognition. She saw you in your moment of dying and thought, yes, this one. Their horses' hooves, crossing the sky, leave dew on the earth below. This is a detail from the law that connects them to Not, to the night goddess we met in our earlier journey, whose horse, Primfaxi, left the same silver evidence of its passage. The animals of the night and the animals of the battle, both leaving dew, the threshold between life and death, and the threshold between day and night, touching each other in the same small silver drops on the morning grass. We come now to the psychopomp of the Abrahamic traditions, the one who serves not the Greek or Norse or Egyptian understanding of death, but the monotheistic tradition that has shaped the spiritual imagination of more than half the people on earth. His name means whom God helps, or one who helps God. He is the archangel of death. He is called Azrael in Islamic and Jewish tradition, Malak al-Maut, the angel of death in the Quran. And he is, of all the psychopomps in tonight's journey, the one whose existence is most defined by waiting. He is enormous. The Britannica describes him with a specificity that makes you stop. He has 4,000 wings. His body contains as many eyes and tongues as there are living human beings. And so his body grows and shrinks with every birth and every death, contracting slightly each time a soul is taken, expanding when a new life begins. He stands with one foot in the fourth heaven and the other on the razor-sharp bridge that divides paradise from hell. He is of cosmic scale, not a figure you could pass on the street, not an escort who walks beside you in human form, but something vast enough to contain the whole project of human mortality within his person. And yet he is described consistently as gentle, patient, soft-spoken, hard-working. Azrael's role is to care for the dying so they do not fear death, to remove the soul from the body, and then to guide them to God. The enormous being with 4,000 wings is also, in his function, a comforter. The scale and the tenderness coexist in him without contradiction. The detail I find most compelling about Azrael is this: he never knows when someone is going to die until God tells him. He does not decide. He does not choose. He waits with his scroll on which every living being's name is written. And when God decrees that a particular name should be erased, Azrael goes. He has no discretion. He has no preferences. He cannot be bribed, cannot be argued with, cannot be delayed by anything on earth or in heaven. He is the perfect instrument of an absolute will that is not his own. This is very different from the Valkyries, who choose. Very different from Hermes, who has personality and trickery, and the freedom of movement that comes with being a divine messenger, rather than a divine instrument. Azrael is obedience made into a being, the most compliant entity in existence. And this obedience is not weakness, it is what makes him trustworthy. What he does to you, he does to everyone, without exception, without preference, without the possibility of error or corruption. There is a story told in the tradition about Azrael and Solomon. The wise king was sitting in his court when a man rushed in, pale and terrified. He had just encountered Azrael in the marketplace, and the angel of death had looked at him in a way that told him his time was near. He begged Solomon, "Send me far from here. Send me somewhere Azrael cannot reach." Solomon, who could speak to the wind, commanded the wind to carry the man to India, the furthest place Solomon could imagine. Later, Solomon saw Azrael and asked, "Why did you look at that man so strangely in the market?" Azrael said, "I was surprised to see him there. I had an appointment with him in India." The story is told in many versions across many traditions. It is not unique to Azrael. Versions of it exist in Babylonian literature, in medieval European tales, in the Sufi tradition. It is one of the most widely traveled stories in the history of the world because it touches something that every human being has felt: the futility of running from what is coming, the appointment that is always kept. The angel of death is not a threat. He is a fact. And facts, unlike threats, cannot be negotiated with. He comes for everyone. He comes gently, and he was there before any of them, and will be there after. If Azrael is the psychopomp for everyone, vast, patient, cosmic in his reach, then the figure we meet now is the psychopomp for the most specific and the most heartbreaking category of the dead: the children. His name is Jizo, and in Japan, where his small stone statues can be found along roadsides, in temple graveyards, at crossroads, dressed in red bibs and red wool caps, he is one of the most beloved figures in the entire spiritual tradition. Jizo is a bodhisattva, a being who has attained enlightenment but chosen to remain in the world, postponing their own complete liberation in order to help all sentient beings reach the same shore. The bodhisattva is a figure of radical compassion, the one who could leave and chooses not to because the work of accompanying is not finished. Jizo's particular work is this: in Japanese Buddhist belief, children who die before their parents, infants, unborn children, children who die young of illness or accident, face a specific difficulty in the afterlife. They have not lived long enough to accumulate good karma. They have not had the chance to perform the deeds that would earn them safe passage across the Sanzu River, the river that the dead must cross, the Buddhist counterpart of the Styx. And because they died before their parents, they have caused their parents grief, which is considered a kind of debt. So the children cannot cross. They gather instead at Sai no Kawara, the stony riverbank before the river, the children's limbo, and there they try to build towers of pebbles, small towers, one stone on top of another, over and over, in the hope that if they stack enough stones, they will earn the right to cross. Every evening, the demons come and knock the towers down. The children rebuild. The demons come again. The stones scatter. This is where Jizo goes. He comes to Sai no Kawara, to that bleak, stony shore where the small dead are endlessly building and the demons are endlessly destroying. And he does two things. He stacks 3 rocks himself to confuse the demons, who mistake the rocks for a child and begin to eat them. And while the demons are distracted, Jizo opens his robe. He hides the children inside it, all of them, as many as need hiding. He gathers them against him, holds them in the folds of his garment, protects them from the demons until he can lead them safely across. He comes back every day. He has always come back every day. He will always come back. In Japan today, bereaved parents, those who have lost infants, or experienced miscarriage, or made the decision to terminate a pregnancy, sometimes commission a small stone Jizo statue and place it at a temple. They dress it in a red bib or a little red hat. They bring it toys. They speak to it. They are entrusting their child to Jizo's robe. They are asking him, in the quiet way you ask someone you trust, to hold the one they could not hold. There is no psychopomp in tonight's journey who moves me as much as this one. Not because the others are less, they are all extraordinary, but because Jizo's function is so specific and so necessary, and because the people who need him most are the ones the other traditions have no particular provision for. The children who cannot cross alone, the ones the demons circle. He comes to them. He puts them in his robe. He carries them across. We travel now to Mesoamerica, to the world of the Aztec, the Mexica, a civilization we have visited before, in the Nightbringers episode, where Tezcatlipoca met us in the dark. Tonight, we meet a very different figure from the sovereign night god with his obsidian mirror. We meet something smaller, warmer, and in its own way more necessary. We meet the dog. The Aztec underworld was called Mictlan, and Mictlan was not a simple place. It was a journey of 9 levels, 9 distinct territories that the soul of the dead had to traverse, each one presenting its own obstacle, its own ordeal. Crossing a vast desert, passing through a wind of cutting obsidian knives, crossing 8 mountain ranges. The journey took 4 years. 4 years of walking alone through the 9 levels of Mictlan. Or not alone, because the Aztec buried their dead with a dog. Xolotl is the dog-headed god, or the god in the form of a dog, specifically the Xoloitzcuintli, the ancient hairless dog of Mesoamerica, still bred in Mexico today. He was understood to guide the souls of the dead through Mictlan, through all 9 of its levels, to the final resting place in the deepest part of the underworld. The dog knew the way. The dog had always known the way. This is why you buried your dead with a dog, or with an image of a dog, or with a rope that would symbolically connect the dead to their canine guide, because the soul needed a guide who knew Mictlan, who had made the crossing before, who could navigate the cutting winds and the dark rivers and the 9 levels of the dead's geography. The human soul could not do it alone, but the dog could. What the 9 levels of Mictlan contain, the Aztec tradition described with precision. The first level was a wide river, dark and cold, without a ferryman, without a bridge. The soul had to cross it, and the only way was through. The second level was a place where 2 mountain ranges met and ground against each other in permanent collision. The soul had to pass between them in the moment of their separation. The third level was the field of obsidian wind, a wind that cut like knives, incessant and unendurable. The fourth level, a plain of biting beasts, and so on, through 8 more levels of darkness and difficulty, until the 9th, the deep place, the resting place, the realm of Mictlantecuhtli himself, the Lord of the Dead, where the soul finally found its rest. 4 years of walking through this, and the dog beside you the whole way. The warm body, the familiar smell, the creature who had known you in life, who had slept at your feet and followed you across familiar ground, now following you across ground that was nothing like familiar, whose terrain was nothing like the world you had shared, who nevertheless kept pace, who knew the way when you did not, who led you through the obsidian wind and across the grinding mountains and over the dark river, level by level, until the deepest place was reached. This is why the burial of a dog with the dead was not superstition, it was provision. The most practical thing a family could do for someone who had died was ensure they would not face Mictlan's 4-year journey alone. Xolotl is also something more than a guide. He is a god of lightning, of fire, of the deformities that the Aztec associated with sacred difference, the doubled and the irregular, the Xolo dog itself being a creature of unusual appearance, almost naked, the skin warm to the touch. He is the twin of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. He is the divine trickster who refused to be sacrificed when the gods were creating the fifth sun. But his psychopomp function is what endures in the imagination. The dog beside the dead in the grave, the guide through the 9 levels, the warm body in the dark of Mictlan, leading the way. And this is where the animal thread that I mentioned at the beginning becomes most visible, because the dog as psychopomp is not only Aztec. Dogs appear at the threshold of death in Greek mythology, Cerberus at the gate, though that is a guardian rather than a guide. Dogs appear in Celtic traditions, in Anatolian mythology, in the traditions of ancient Mesopotamia. The dog who accompanies the dead is one of the most persistent images in all of human culture. We buried our dead with dogs in dozens of separate traditions because we understood that dogs move between worlds with an ease that humans cannot manage. The dog that finds the dying, the dog that lies by the deathbed, the dog that refuses to leave the grave. If any animal on earth has earned the title of psychopomp, the dog earned it first. Leave the dog by the fireside a moment. We will need that warmth to remember, because where we go next is colder, and the companionship on offer is harder to hold. We return now to Ireland, where the landscape itself is thin, where the mist comes in from the Atlantic and sits between the hills, and everything feels as if it is in 2 worlds simultaneously, where the dead are close. The psychopomp we meet here is unlike any of the others in tonight's company. She does not escort in the sense of walking beside or carrying across. She does not weigh or ferry or choose. She does not guide through 9 levels or hide in her robe. She mourns. She is the bean cedar, the woman of the fairy mound, the woman of the other world, the one who comes before death to weep for it. We know her as the Banshee. There are things commonly understood about the Banshee that are not quite right, and I want to set them aside before I tell you what she actually is. She does not cause death. She does not choose it. She is not a threat. She is not the omen of something you can avoid if you are clever or careful enough. She is not malevolent. She knows. That is the thing. She knows that a death is coming. She knows it before it arrives. And she knows whose death it is. And what she does with that knowledge is extraordinary in its intimacy. She weeps. The keening of the Banshee, the wild, high, desolate wailing that the tradition says can be heard at night, thin and terrible, somewhere between a woman's voice and something older than any human sound, is not a threat or a warning in the way we sometimes understand warning. It is grief, real grief, genuine grief, the grief of someone who loved the person who is dying. Because the Banshee is attached to specific families, not to humanity in general, not to any soul who happens to die in her territory. To particular lineages, the old Irish families, the great clans, the ones with enough history for the relationship to have deepened over centuries. She has been present at every death in that family for as long as anyone can remember. She has keened at every graveside. She knows every member of the lineage, living and dead, the way you know a family you have served and loved for generations. Like the Valkyries, the Banshees who survive in the strongest detail have names. The O'Brien Banshee, who haunts the lands of County Clare to this day, is called O'Bhill. She is older than the keening alone would suggest. In the oldest tellings, she is a sovereignty spirit, a guardian of the territory itself, who attached herself to the O'Brien line in the time of Brian Boru, the High King of Ireland, and never left. The tradition holds that she appeared to Brian Boru himself on the eve of the Battle of Clontarf in 1014, and that her appearance was understood by everyone who heard the story afterward as the surest sign that the king would not survive the battle to come. He did not. The O'Neill Banshee has a name too, Maven, the White Lady of Sorrow, and tradition holds that she was given her own room in the family's castle at Loughneel, a chamber kept for her alone, generation after generation, whether or not anyone ever saw her standing in it. A room kept ready for a guest who only comes to say goodbye. These are not interchangeable wailing women. They are specific beings with specific histories, embedded in specific families, the way an old family Bible or an old family ring is embedded, passed down, accounted for, spoken of by name at the table, even when she has not been heard in a generation. This is the quality of the Banshee that I find most worth dwelling on. The intimacy of attachment across generations. The psychopomp who is not universal but particular. Not the escort of every soul, but the companion of this family. Most of the psychopomps we have visited tonight are agents of a vast and impersonal system. The machinery of death, the system by which all souls are processed and escorted. The Banshee is something different. She is a relationship. She chose this family, or was chosen by them, somewhere in the deep past, and she has stayed. She keens at the death of a daughter. She keened at the death of the daughter's grandmother. She will keen at the death of the daughter's children's children. She is, in some sense, the family's memory of its own mortality, the one who holds the long view, who has attended enough of their deaths to understand the pattern of the lineage. And there is a tenderness in the keening that is worth naming. She grieves before you do. She cries for the dying before anyone else knows to cry. She has done the work of mourning before the body is cold. When you hear the Banshee weep, you are hearing grief that precedes yours, grief offered on your behalf, carried by someone who cares enough to begin the mourning before you have to. It is not comfortable. It is not pleasant. It is not the warmth of Jizo's robe, or the efficiency of Charon's ferry, but it is love, the particular, long-tailed, cross-generational love of someone who has been present for every ending your family has ever faced. The Banshee cries so that you will know someone else already cries with you. From Ireland, we travel across the Celtic Sea to Brittany, the westernmost point of France, a peninsula of granite cliffs and dark forests, and a language that is closer to Welsh than to French, a culture that preserved its Celtic roots through centuries of assimilation and is still, in some deep way, ancient. The Breton death figure is unlike any other we will meet tonight, not because of what he looks like. He is tall and gaunt and skeletal, clad in a dark cloak, carrying a scythe, but because of who he is. He is not a god. He is not a divine being. He is your neighbor. The Ankou, an Ankou in Breton, a word that comes from an ancient Celtic root for death, is death's servant, not death itself. He collects the souls of the recently departed and escorts them to the other world. He drives his cart, the Carrig and Ankou, the creaking cart, drawn by black horses, through the lanes and roads of the parish at night, stopping at houses where the dying lie, taking what is his to take. But here is the thing that makes the Ankou extraordinary. The role rotates. In Breton folk tradition, the last person to die in a parish each year becomes the Ankou for the following year. Not a permanent appointment, not a divine calling, not the destiny of a specific being created for the purpose. A civic duty, rotating through the community, the way any communal responsibility rotates. You die last in the parish this year. For the next year, you collect the souls of your neighbors. You know the lanes. You know the houses. You know which door will need tending before the year is out, because you know these people. You are not a stranger arriving from the cosmic machinery of death. You are someone who lived here, who ate at these tables, who knew these names. Death is local. Death knows where you live. The creaking cart is the Ankou's signature. The Carrig and Ankou, rolling through the night. The axle grinding, the sound of it drifting through the darkness. And if you hear it outside your door, the tradition says, someone in your household will die within 3 days. But here is the detail that I find most haunting about the sound. It is not random. The cart does not wander. It has a route. It has a schedule. The Ankou knows his parish, knows which households he needs to visit and when, knows the lanes and which ones lead to the farms where the dying are waiting. The creaking is not the sound of something searching. It is the sound of something that knows exactly where it is going. And it is accompanied sometimes by a barn owl. The Lapus and Ankou, the bird of the Ankou. The owl that sits on a rooftop and calls in the dark is, in Breton tradition, the Ankou's herald. The bird that moves between the visible and invisible worlds with the same ease as its master. The owl cry in the night outside your window, answering the creak of the unseen cart. Two threshold beings, moving together through the parish dark. One with feathers, one with a scythe, both doing the work that keeps the living and the dead in proper relation to each other. The Ankou has a quality that I want to sit with before we leave him. He enforces continuity. He makes sure the ledger of lives is closed and handed on. Every community, at the end of every year, has a last death. And that last death carries the responsibility for the next year's endings. The cycle is unbroken. There is always an Ankou, There is always someone who knows the parish. There is always someone at the wheel of the creaking cart. In a world where death can feel random and abandoned and chaotic, where people die alone in unfamiliar places, without the right preparation, without anyone who knows their name, the Ankou is the insistence that death in Brittany, at least, is personal, that someone who lived here will come for you, that the cart that stops at your door will be driven by someone who knows which door it is. There is a cold comfort in it, but it is comfort. Everything I have told you tonight has been, in its various registers, solemn, Hermes efficient, Charon silent, Anubis precise, the Valkyries fierce, Azrael patient, Jizo tender, Xolotl warm, the Banshee sorrowful, the Ankou grinding through the dark. And now, Baron Samedi, with a top hat, the cigar, the rum, the dark glasses, one lens missing, so that the same eye can see both the world of the living and the world of the dead simultaneously. And the jokes, always the jokes, and beside him, red gold hair, purple and black robes, a black rooster on her arm, her eyes the green of the Atlantic between Ireland and Haiti, which is the ocean her story crossed to arrive here. She is Maman Brigitte, Mother Brigitte, and she is the other half of everything we are about to hear. Baron Samedi is the most powerful and most recognizable LWA of Haitian Vodou, the spirits who mediate between the living world and the divine. He is the Lord of Death, the guardian of the cemetery, the figure who stands at the crossroads between life and what comes next and decides, with the authority of the first grave, who crosses and when. He is dressed as a corpse, would be dressed for burial in the Haitian tradition. The black tuxedo, the white face or skull face, the cotton stuffed in the nostrils. He carries the appearance of death while being vibrantly, irrepressibly alive. He drinks rum laced with hot pepper, a mixture that would destroy a living throat. But Samedi's throat is something other than living. He smokes, he dances, he makes obscene jokes at every possible opportunity, including and especially at funerals. He is, in the most literal possible sense, the life of the party, at the end of all parties. He is the head of the Gade, the family of death spirits in Vodou, the LWA who govern everything related to mortality. And he has a specific power that distinguishes him from almost every other psychopomp in this episode. He can refuse to dig the grave. If Baron Samedi does not dig the grave, if he does not open the earth for the body, the person cannot die. This is not metaphor. In the Vodou understanding, Samedi's cooperation is required for death to be completed. A healer who works with Samedi can, in principle, negotiate the life of someone who is dying, can offer Samedi something he wants, can persuade or placate him, can call on the relationship between the living and the LWA to hold back what would otherwise be inevitable. He is the gatekeeper who can be worked with, the guardian who loves. But there is another side to this power that is worth dwelling on. Baron Samedi is not only the Lord of Death, he is also, in the Vodou understanding, one of the great healers. The same authority that allows him to refuse to dig the grave, to withhold death from someone whose time has technically come, also allows him to cure, to reverse the progress of illness, to pull someone back from the edge when the living and the LWA work together with sufficient devotion and sufficient skill. He controls the boundary from both sides. he can hold it closed as well as open it. The petitions at his altars reflect this. People come to him with rum and cigars and specific prayers that acknowledge his nature fully, the irreverence and the power, the laughter and the authority. They approach him directly, honestly, with full knowledge of who he is. He is not a god who rewards elaborate propriety. He is a god who rewards genuine engagement. Vodou emerged from one of the most brutal episodes in human history, the transatlantic slave trade, the plantation system of Saint-Domingue, the systematic destruction of African peoples and cultures on Haitian soil. Baron Samedi and the Gaida were forged in that crucible. The irreverence, the humor, the refusal to be solemn about death, these are not incidental qualities. They are a theology. When you have been made to witness death used as a weapon, when death has been used to terrorize and control your community, one of the most radical things you can do is refuse to be terrified by it, to dress up as death, to drink at death's altar and crack jokes and dance, to say, "We know what you are, death. We have seen you, and we will not be afraid of you. We will party at your threshold." The carnivalesque quality of Baron Samedi is resistance made into a Elwar, the life that insists on itself in the face of everything that has tried to take it. And at his side, through all of it, Maman Brigitte. She is his wife, his counterpart, his equal, while Samedi is the extrovert of the pair. The top hat and the rum and the performance at the crossroads, Maman Brigitte is something different. Not quieter exactly. She is loud, irreverent, sexual, fierce. But her energy moves differently. Where Samedi tends to the graves of men, Brigitte tends the graves of women. The first female grave in a Haitian cemetery belongs to her, marked with a cross, designated as hers, under her protection. She guards what lies in the ground. She ensures the dead are treated with the dignity they are owed. Her origins are one of the most extraordinary stories in the entire history of Vodou. Maman Brigitte is not African. She is Irish. Or more precisely, she is what happened when an Irish goddess was carried across the Atlantic by Irish and Scottish women who found themselves working alongside enslaved Africans on Haitian plantations. Women transported as indentured servants or as punishment for crimes, bringing with them the old beliefs of the Celtic world. They brought Brigitte with them. Brigitte, the Irish goddess of hearth and fire, of poetry and healing and the sacred flame that was never allowed to go out. In Haiti, under conditions of unimaginable hardship, Brigitte did not disappear. She transformed. The goddess of the living flame became the goddess of the cemetery fire. The healer became the protector of the dead. The keeper of the hearth became the keeper of the graves. And she entered the Vodou tradition as Maman Brigitte, the only Elder de Bois who is depicted as white, with red gold hair and green eyes, the face of the Atlantic world that arrived on those plantations and stayed. She is fierce, in the way that Vodou Elbois are fierce, not malevolent, but not gentle either. She protects women, particularly those in danger. She heals those who are sick. She speaks hard truths. She punishes those who fail to respect and tend the graves of the dead. And she accompanies the dying on the final crossing, not with Samedi's bravado and rum, but with the steady presence of a mother who has seen enough death to know it does not have to be faced alone. Together, Samedi and Brigitte tend the full register of what death is in the Vodou understanding. He tends the crossroads, the transition, the irreverent assertion of life in death's face. She tends the graves, the memory, the protection of what lies beneath the earth, and the people who grieve above it. He parties at the threshold. She keeps the threshold clean. Between them, they hold everything. We end tonight's journey in Mexico, in the world that gave us Xolotl and the 9 levels of Mictlan and the ancient theological machinery of the Aztec tradition, but also in a much more recent world, the world of the last 100 years, of the 20th and 21st centuries, of the city and the barrio and the altar, in the back room of a house in a neighborhood the official church does not come to. Santa Muerte is the most actively worshipped figure of death in the contemporary world. More than 10 million people venerate her. Her shrines line the streets of Mexico City. Her image appears on tattoos, on candles, on altarpieces painted in the most vivid colors you have ever seen. She is female, skeletal, robed, often carrying a scythe and a globe, the symbols of her dominion over all earthly things. She is not officially sanctioned by the Catholic Church. She has been condemned by the Vatican. The Mexican government has demolished thousands of her roadside shrines. She is still here. She is more beloved than ever. Her origins are layered and contested. Scholars trace threads back to Mictlantecuhtli, the Aztec goddess of the dead, to the Spanish colonial Catholicism that arrived with the conquistadors and its imagery of death as a skeletal figure, to the African religious traditions that came with the enslaved people, brought to the Americas and left their mark on the spiritual landscape in ways that official history has often ignored. Santa Muerte is not a single tradition. She is a convergence, the place where multiple streams of death theology met and blended and produced something new. But what she is, to the people who love her, is simpler than any of that. She accepts everyone. This is the central claim of Santa Muerte devotion, and it is the quality that explains her extraordinary popularity among people who feel that the official religious structures have failed them. The Catholic saints, the official channels of divine mercy, these are understood in Mexican folk religion to have preferences, to be more accessible to the virtuous, the prosperous, the respectable, to require a certain kind of life in order to be worthy of their attention. Santa Muerte has no such requirement. She comes for everyone. She accepts the prayers of the prisoner and the prison guard, of the drug dealer and the person whose family member was killed by a drug dealer, of the migrant crossing the desert, of the sex worker, of the sick child, of the person dying of AIDS at a time when AIDS was understood as a punishment, of the person dying of AIDS now, of anyone who has ever felt that the official pathways to divine mercy were not for them. She is death as a great equalizer, and in this, she inherits something very old, something that has been true of death from the beginning. Death does not distinguish. It comes for the emperor and the slave. It comes for the saint and the criminal. It comes for the beautiful and the wretched and the powerful and the invisible. Santa Muerte has made a religion of that truth. At her altars, offerings are left: food, water, cigarettes, tequila, flowers, photographs of those who have died, and those who are sick, and those who are in danger. Prayers for protection, prayers for healing, prayers for the safe crossing of souls. Her robes are not always white. Santa Muerte wears different colors, and each color is a language, a way of specifying what you are asking for, what quality of her power you are calling on. White for purification, for spiritual cleansing, for the protection of children. Red for love and passion, for matters of the heart. Gold for financial protection, for prosperity, for the safety of those who work in dangerous ways to survive. Green for justice, for those entangled in legal proceedings, for those who have been wronged and seek redress. Black for the strongest protection, for shielding against dark forces, for those who feel most threatened. Purple for healing, for those who are sick and those who tend them. And rainbow robes, all the colors at once, when the petition is for everything, when the person kneeling has needs that no single color can contain. The figure at the altar wears the color you need. You dress her yourself sometimes, commission a statue, and clothe it in the robe that speaks to your situation. The relationship between the devotee and Santa Muerte is active in a way that institutional religion rarely permits. You bring her what you have. You tell her what you need. You leave what you can. And you trust that the figure who accepts everyone and judges no one is genuinely listening. The Dia de los Muertos altars that fill Mexico every November are not Santa Muerte's altars specifically. They are a broader tradition of tending the relationship between the living and the dead, the annual renewal of that relationship through food and flowers and photograph and candle. But Santa Muerte's devotion has something of that quality too. The sense that death is not an ending to be mourned once and set aside, but a relationship to be maintained. The dead are not gone. Santa Muerte ensures they arrive safely, and the living keep the altar lit to say, we know this, we acknowledge this, we are not pretending the crossing does not happen, because she is also a psychopomp. She escorts the dead. She stands at the threshold and receives all comers, not selectively, not based on merit or status or faith or the kind of life that was lived. She receives the dead the way she receives the prayers of the living, without condition. The Banshee loves a specific family across generations. Santa Muerte loves everyone. These are not competing visions of what a psychopomp is. They are different scales of the same impulse. The impulse to ensure that the dying are not alone, that the crossing is accompanied, that at the threshold there is someone waiting who will not turn you away. She has been vilified. She has been called a narco-saint, a tool of criminals, a corruption of true religion. Some of this is true in part. Like every powerful spiritual figure, she's been invoked for purposes that shade into the harmful. But the research is clear. Her devotees include people from every walk of life, every level of society, every degree of desperation and hope. She is not the saint of criminals. She is the saint of the human condition, which is to say, she is the saint of all of us. La Flaquita, the skinny lady, La Santa Muerte, Our Lady of Holy Death. She stands at the threshold with her scythe and her globe and her open arms. And she does not ask who you are before she lets you in. "11 journeys tonight, 11 companions at the threshold. Hermes, who was there before any of them had a name, the god of all crossings, moving between sky and earth and underworld with equal ease, raising his caduceus so the dead will follow, leading them from what they were to what they become. Charon, who poles his boat across the dark water and says very little and is always there. The ferryman who makes the crossing possible for the price of a single coin, pressed between the lips of someone you love. Anubis, who begins with the body and ends with the heart, who tends the physical with the same precision and care that he brings to the spiritual, who holds the scale steady while the feather and the heart find their balance. The Valkyries, crossing the sky on their horses, seeing in the chaos of the dying battlefield which of the fallen are worthy of the long table and the mead hall and the company of the honored dead, lifting the chosen up, carrying them home through the air that leaves dew on the grass below. Azrael, vast and patient, with his 4,000 wings and his scroll and his eyes that hold the name of every living person. Waiting, always waiting, until the name is given, and then going with the gentleness of something that has always understood its task as an act of service, rather than an act of power. Jizo, on the stony bank of the children's limbo, confusing the demons with his pile of rocks, opening his robe to hide the children inside it, leading them across the river they could not cross alone, coming back tomorrow, as he always comes back, to do it again. Xolotl, the dog, warm and knowing in the dark of Mictlan, guiding the soul through all 9 levels of the underworld's geography, with the ease of an animal who has always known which way is through. The Banshee, keening on the hill, not a threat, but a mourner, not a cause, but a witness, a being who has known this family long enough to grieve for them before they know to grieve for themselves. The Ankou, his cart grinding through the Breton night, the owl on the rooftop ahead of him, knowing every lane and every door and every name in the parish, because he lived here once, and his year of service will not end until the next last death comes to relieve him. Baron Samedi and Maman Brigitte, he at the cemetery crossroads, rum in hand, ready to party, refusing to let death be only solemn. She at the graveside, red gold and fierce, tending what lies beneath the earth, having crossed an ocean to do it. Both of them insisting that the threshold be approached with the fullness of life rather than the diminishment of fear. And Santa Muerte, La Flaquita, her arms open to everyone who comes, the sick and the desperate, and the condemned and the invisible, the ones who felt that no other saint would hear them, receiving them all without distinction, without condition, without exception. I have been thinking, gathering all of these figures into one place, about what they share. They are not the cause of death, not one of them. They are not the judge, not one of them. They have no power over what happens on the other side of the threshold. They simply know the threshold. They simply know the way. And they are, without exception, without fail, without the possibility of being absent. There is a word in the midwifery tradition, which is the other threshold, the one at the beginning, for the person who accompanies a birth. Doula, the one who is there, the one whose only job in that overwhelming and irreversible moment is to be present, to hold, to witness, to say, I am here. You are not alone in this. The psychopomps are death's doulas. They do not choose the moment. They do not control the outcome. They are simply, reliably, always, and without exception, there. And the animals are there too. The dog in the grave, the owl on the roof, the raven circling the battlefield, the crow at the crossroads, the butterfly in many traditions, the soul made visible, traveling between what it was and what it is becoming. The animals who move between worlds with a fluency the living cannot manage. They are part of the same company, the same ancient understanding that the threshold should be tended, that the crossing should be accompanied, that no soul should make the journey without something that knows the way. Whatever you believe about what comes after, whatever your tradition, whatever your doubt, whatever the particular shape of your uncertainty about the largest questions, you are held tonight in a long human conviction that stretches from the earliest burials in the archaeological record to the altars of Santa Muerte being tended in Mexico City right now. The conviction that the crossing should not be made alone, that someone should be there, that the threshold should be tended with care. They are there. They have always been there. Let your breathing slow. Let your body be held. The night is in good hands. The threshold tenders are at their posts. Sleep well. Sleep